Hey everyone, so I want to talk about our test today and go over a couple of the questions. Now, the title of this first passage is $2. It should have something to do with the passage. I also want to say that with this passage, I apologize. It is not the most interesting passage. It's about the Great Depression or a family during the Great Depression, so it is a little challenging to get through, but we are given the passages that we're given. So the first question right here, I just want to make sure you remember these terms, okay? So simile, a comparison using like or as; metaphor, a direct comparison that doesn't use like or as; and then flashback is when we are in today, like it's 2026, and we jump back to a time in the past. So we go back to 2015, we go back to 1970, and talk about that. Scrooge had a flashback in A Christmas Carol when he went back and saw, his sister, and he saw Fezziwig. And then foreshadowing is not a jump in the future. Foreshadowing, though, it's the beginning of the story or near the beginning of a story, and I'm hinting at something that's going to come later in the story. So think about those four, and which is this the best example of. Question 4 is one of those we're just clicking the best answer choice here. The first one is main conflict. So which one of these four best applies to our main conflict that begins our story? Now, it's not right at the beginning of the story, but think about, of these three, what's the main conflict that our story is kind of focusing around? And then what's the resolution? And this resolution should, again, tie back into this main conflict, but also this resolution comes at the very, very end. I don't think the other two are even near the end. Okay. Now, this next question, question 9, asks about the word solemnly. Now, with solemnly, you want to, when you're looking for a vocabulary word, you want to read the whole paragraph before, maybe after the sentence, okay? So Mr. Katz didn't look up or speak, but nodded. The skinny little girl began to cry. Without a word, Helen's father put all of the Katz's rent money back on the table. Then he solemnly took out the rest of the money he'd collected that day and counted out $2 in coins. So, do we think he's embarrassed, excited, angry, or serious based on how it was used in that paragraph? The same idea with question 11. The other house was next door and 3 families lived there. Everything went smoothly at first, 2 apartments, but both Helen and her father were worried about the third. The Katz family never had enough money, and it had become harder and harder to accept their rent. Even though her father had lowered it, he said it was important to be especially good to this family because Mr. Katz served in the army in the Great War and deserved their gratitude. So what does gratitude mean based on that paragraph, right? He served in the Great War. It's now the Great Depression. He's fell on hard times, but he deserves our what because of it. Now, question 12, we've seen a bunch of these before, right? Which 3 underlined words have the most? But now we're looking at negative connotations. So again, connotations for everyone, just the emotion that you attach to a word. I used the example the other day, dog versus cockroach. Every word in our language has an emotional connection, whether you believe it or not. The reason why you're kind of like indifferent, you're like, whatever, Mr. Black, no, they don't, is because there are words that have, neutral meanings to you. Like, you don't care about the word pen, it doesn't mean anything. But every word has it in some way, shape, or form. Now, some are more powerful than others. Like I said, cockroach, way more negative. Dog should be way more positive. So of these words here, pick 3 of them that seem negative to you. Now, this second passage is a lot shorter, but still kind of challenging because it's just not as interesting to me. But it's called In Building Relationships, Empathy Seems to Be the Key. And I want to make sure we understand what the word empathy means. Empathy is the ability to understand and share the feelings of others. The ability to understand and share the feelings of others. Now, if it's in the title, you can probably make a guess right off the bat. And the rest of the passage is going to be talked about. And it's probably going to be important to understanding the meaning and the message and the main idea of the overall passage. So when we look here at our first question I wanted to talk about was question 16. Now, these nominations allowed us to visualize dense webs of young relationships that are college dorms, social networks. This was such a hard way to ask this question because it just isn't obvious that you are saying that college dorms are social networks. College dorms are social networks for young relationships, okay? So I'm making a comparison. So looking at here, you should already narrow it down to 2 and then ask yourself, right, which am I using like or as? Okay, question 23. Now question 23, This is everybody's favorite question, right? We see this question all the time. Oh, skip question 17. I'm going to jump back to question 17. So question 23, I just wanted to go over this because I've been going over these. I think this is the easiest one we've seen. If you read the passage, right? Ties, physical cords, ropes, or fasteners. Do we talk about that in this passage? Mapped, to create a geographic representation of an area on paper. Do we do that in this passage? Circles, groups of people. Do we do that in this passage? Talk about that in this passage. Buoy, which we do talk about the word buoy. All 4 words are in here, okay? And you're actually going to physically talk about the word buoy, but a floating marker used in water to guide ships or mark a location. Are we talking about the ocean? Are we talking about water? Are we marking locations? Question 17 was the buoy question. Look at that. So it's so funny, right? Buoy. So this one, on the other hand, I don't really think you need to go back in the passage for. I think you have enough information right here because it gave you a paragraph. But sometimes it won't. Sometimes it only gives you a sentence. And if it only gives you a sentence, you really, really want to look at the entire thing.